You ready, Sue?
Um,
Almost.
well.
Okay. Cool.
Don't have six without.
Okay.
We're gonna get started here in just a
Oh.
minute.
Maybe. Okay. Is she in? Christina's here.
Well, we can always come back.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna call the Board of Trustees meeting for June 17, 2024. It's 4:37 p.m. for the Public School Retirement System of the City of St. Louis. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. So we're gonna start off with roll call, Sue.
Angela Banks,
She said that she might be late
a little late.
because she was in a car accident.
Oh. Christina Bennett,
I'm back.
That was quick.
thank you. Lewis Cross,
Present.
Sheila Goodwin,
Here.
Emily Hubbard,
Here.
Shanice Johnson,
Present.
Martell Mann, Angie Banks,
Here.
Oh. Okay.
Yvette Levy,
Here.
Martell Mann,
Here.
Bobby Richardson, Albert Sanders, Doris Walker.
Here.
Okay, so we do have.
We have 7.
We have 9.
9.
So we have enough. We
Okay.
have 9, so we have enough for a quorum.
Okay. So we're gonna start off with the approval of the minutes of last meeting, tab 1. Board of Trustees regular meeting, April 15th, 2024. Can I get a motion to accept those minutes?
Sheila Goodwin makes a motion that we accept the minutes of April 15, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly seconded by Doris Walker and moved by Sheila Goodwin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that passes. Okay, reading of communications of the Board of Trustees. So
I
we
don't-
have any?
I don't have anything.
Okay, presentations by interested parties.
I don't have
None.
anything there.
Okay, consent agenda, approval of retirement and benefits for May 2024. Is there a motion to accept?
Sheila Goodwin makes a motion that we accept the retirees for May 2024.
Is there a second? It's been properly moved and seconded. Sheila Goodwin moved and Doris Walker seconded that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. All right, next, approval of refunds and bills, April and May of 2024. Is there a motion to accept?
Sheila Goodwin makes a motion that we accept the payment of bills for April and May 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, moving on, unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business? Okay. Okay, report of the chairperson. Basically, at this particular point in time, after numerous visits to Jefferson City and meeting with the House and Senate, we are at a point where we have to meet with the school board at least 4 times by September of 24 and try to hammer out some sort of understanding about how we're going to move forward in terms of capping the amount of money that the board is taking out of, not giving to our pension every January. As you know, in January of 17, a bill was passed, and in 18, it went into effect. And so the board would reduce the amount of money they paid into our pension by 0.5% each year, starting in 18. And so it's been six years. Is that right, Sue? 6 years.
Yeah.
So I think in that 6-year period, the number that pops up is $30 million less that the school system has paid into our pension because of that bill that was passed, 30 million. So we're trying to cap it at a certain percentage, possibly. We've had our actuary, and Mike is here today to do some figures and so forth about all of the things that might happen actuarially because of going forward. If we don't get this capped and all of those things. And Michael talked to us about that. So that's the most, that's one of the more important things, as you all know, because we're at 62% funding and we're on the watch list. So that's where we are with that. And other than that, we were in Atlanta, Georgia. Let's see. Christina, myself, and who else, Christina? Oh, and Sheila and Bobby, all 4 of us, all of the officers, and plus Christina, the chairman of the investment committee, the co-chair. So we got a lot of good information, and we are going to make a report, and we'll have that forthcoming, I guess, when we have the next meeting, which will be in the fall, right? Do we have a meeting in?
We have August.
August, yeah, we'll do that in August. So that concludes my report, and we look forward to having meetings this over the summer with the teachers union, the administrators union, and the school board to try to get some kind of package or something to help us with this whole process. Okay, that concludes my report. Next, we have report of the executive director. Tab 4.
All right.
Sue?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few items here that I wanted to touch base on. You have the regular report items in there in tab 4. We typically have phone reporting that we talk about. So I have those statistics in there, but I also wanted to mention that we will be transitioning. The trustees approved the move from our current vendor who was going away, getting out of the business, to Zoltus, who will be our new phone vendor. That's going to happen this Thursday. So I've been doing a lot of testing and everything seems like it's going to go well. So fingers crossed that it will, but just wanted to let everybody know that's about to happen. Another item that we've talked about before is our pension administration system RFP. And we have 7 bidders that indicated they would submit proposals. And that due date for those proposals is this Friday, June 21st. So we will have more discussions. I think at the last meeting, the board did talk about becoming involved in those finalist presentations. So we'll be in contact with the Personnel and Professional Contracts Committee, co-chairs Richardson and Martell Mann, to talk about getting meetings together to see those finalist presentations. So we're looking forward to seeing what happens with those bids on Friday. I also wanted to mention that I attended last week the NCTR system directors meeting, and that was excellent. There were 28 system directors that gathered, and we talked about a variety of issues, including just really a roundtable conversation of what was happening in everybody's system, which was very enlightening. And then also a variety of topics on investments, and there was some actuarial conversations there as well. So a lot of good discussion and a lot of good connections made with systems throughout the country. So appreciate the trustees making that opportunity available, but it was a good few days. The next item that I wanted to talk about was address the renewal that we have for the crime policy and the fiduciary liability policy. There was a memo in the packet that addressed that. And so Gallagher, who is our business consultant, they have negotiated some renewals for us. There is no real change in any of the coverages other than the premiums going up about 5% on the crime policy, and a little bit less than that on the 4% on the fiduciary policy. So those policies, the fiduciary, we actually have 2 layers of coverage there. So we have the crime policy provided by Travelers, and then with fiduciary, we have Travelers and Markel that work together. So those, again, those policies, no changes. The price increase was due again on the crime side, just essentially, higher pricing that's in the market right now. Fiduciary, again, more claims in the industry. So those were those renewals as well. So just pausing to see if anybody had any questions about those 2 renewals.
Any questions? Okay, so
So we do have. You have that motion there. If there's no questions, or when question is done.
okay, could someone read the motion?
To accept a renewal from Travelers Insurance and Markel for the fiduciary policy and from Travelers Insurance for the crime policy as recommended by Gallagher, the system's business insurance. That's in the bottom.
Say a second.
Second.
Okay, we're gonna do a roll call vote soon.
Yeah, there's no other discussion.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Last time, any other discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
Angela Banks,
Yes.
Christina Bennett,
Yes,
Louis Cross,
Yes,
Sheila Goodwin,
yes,
Emily Hubbard,
Emily, are you there?
Yes, sorry, my thumb was not hitting the right place. Yes.
Okay.
Shanice Johnson,
Yes.
Yvette Levy.
Yes.
Martell Mann,
Yes.
Albert Sanders,
Yes.
and Doris Walker.
Yes.
All right, that's 10 yes votes, so the motion carries. So thank you for that. And then just a final note on conferences, since we were talking about that. There is the Makers Conference. I think there's still a little bit of time if anybody else wanted to attend Mapers. And then that's July 10th through the 12th. I think there's a little bit more time to register folks if anybody's interested. And then there is the NCTR trustee workshop. That'll be July 21st to the 24th in Berkeley, California. So if anybody's interested in attending those sessions. And then we do have the NPPFA roundtable. That'll be Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, August 12th through the 14th. So if anybody's interested in attending any of those conferences, please let me know. I've got everybody registered for Mapers that has indicated they wanted to attend, but I think I can add to both of those conferences as well as the NPPFA conference.
Lewis, when you checked on the Mapers, was it the hotel packed?
Yes, they said there were no more rooms available. So I'm gonna work on that. I'll probably have to just be around the corner or something. I guess.
Okay.
So I'll
Yeah, that'd
find
be
out.
10 to 12.
Susan, see if you can get my deposit back.
You don't wanna go?
No, I'm just going to go to the Milwaukee one.
Oh, okay. You're not going to Maples?
No.
Okay, okay, thank you for letting me know.
All right.
Mhm.
Sue, I think you have me down for NCTR, don't you?
Yes, I've got you registered for that Berkeley, California.
Yeah, I'm going to that one too. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I need the October conference.
Yeah, they don't have that registration open yet,
Okay.
but probably by next meeting that'll be available.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Minutes. My
Report.
report.
You all done? Okay, I'm sorry. Son.
No.
Report of the investment consultant. Do we have a report on that?
No.
Okay. Report of the actuary, 2024 valuation report. Mike?
Yes. Let me get my screen shared. How are you doing, everyone? Mike Ribble, thank you, Mr. Chairman, trustees. We're here today to talk about the 2024 valuation results. This is a update of that we do every year, to present the results of the valuation. So why do we do this? Each year we need to perform the actuarial evaluation to update the liabilities and the assets of the retirement system and make sure that, well, first we want to determine the amount of contributions that would be sufficient to fund the plan. And then Lewis mentioned earlier, we actually have statutory contributions and we want to compare against what would be required versus what we're actually receiving, make that comparison. It's been a drag on the system, I think, for a while now, and it continues to be that we don't get enough contributions to support the system in the long term. So we'll look at that and kind of review how that impacts the funding of the plan, the progress and funding status of the plan, and what gains and losses, what's changed since the prior year. So that's the purpose. This is the process we go through. It's a snapshot valuation.
Mike, before we jump into overview, we
Yeah.
can't see your screen.
You can't see it? Can everyone else?
Yeah, we can
No,
see.
we can't see.
Oh, we
it.
can't see the screen. He was gonna.
You can't see the screen?
We
No.
can't see your presentation.
Wow. It says I'm sharing.
Well, you are somewhere, but it's not here.
Yeah.
All
there you
right.
Yeah.
go.
Very
Now what are you
good.
looking at?
There you go.
Now what are you looking at?
It says
overview.
overview valuation.
Evaluation process. All
All
right.
right. I can't tell which one I'm looking at now. All right. Well, there you go. I just covered a bunch of word slides anyway. Thank you very much. All right. So this is the overview of the valuation process. I kind of talked about why we were here, but this is a snapshot valuation. Again, we collect data. So the membership data as of January 1st, 2024. We collect asset information. how the fund performed through December 31st, 2023. And we'll talk about how those are smooth. The asset performance is smooth over 5 years. We continue to have the same actuarial assumptions and methods. We completed experience study at the end of 2020, and we tend to do that every 5 years. So we'll do that again in 2025 to review the assumptions and methods. And then the plan provisions as of January 1st, 2024. There haven't been any changes. But through this process, we do determine the funded ratio of the plan, just monitoring the funded status, and then the actuarially determined employer contribution. Again, that's the contribution rate that we look at to see compared to what the statutory rate is that we receive. So before I pass it to Blake, there's three of us here. Blake is here, Blake Wilderman. He's a senior associate and a project manager for the PSERS valuation. He's going to walk through the first component, the census data for us, and then Matt Stayback, who you all know, will walk through the asset and liability results. And then I'll walk through the key valuation results and look at the funding of the plan. So Blake.
All right, thanks, Mike. So data is one of the key components for the evaluation. This slide is a high-level data reconciliation for the entire population. Each year, we receive the data and determine where the participants are at from last year to this year. Full reconciliation can be seen in the report, but here is a high-level overview of each of the main groups. Of those are the actives, the terminated records, and those in the pay status. So from 2023 to 2024, we see a small increase in the actives of 60 participants. The terminated records, which are the participants who are once active in the plan but no longer and haven't received their benefit just yet, increased by 267. Majority of those coming from terminated participants who didn't meet the vesting service requirements and are only due a refund of their contributions. And lastly, those in the pay status decreased by 84. So with all that in consideration, we see a total increase in the population of 243. So if we can go to the next slide. So this slide here shows more of a breakdown into each of those groups. When doing the valuation, we use this data to check for reasonability, and if any questions arise, then we could use this data to dig a little more into it. I won't go into detail on all these numbers, but the main highlight here on this slide is the average covered payroll, which increased by 6.5% from last year. While this ties into the small increase in the active population, the average covered payroll increased more than what we expected. We'll see on later slides how this affected the valuation. So if we can go to the next slide. So similar to the previous slide, this is more of a breakdown of the participants, but this is for the participants in pay status. The data didn't deviate too much from last year, so this slide is more for informational purposes in showing the number of participants, average age, and then their average benefit. So if we can go to the next slide. This slide is new to the presentation this year and can also be found in the report. It is a breakdown of the medical coverage the plan provides to insurance recipients, which include dental, vision, and your medical coverages. So the plan has an expense and contingency reserve where a proportion of the reserve is set aside to cover insurance supplements of the plan. The information here is a breakdown of the population that is used to calculate the reserve. As you can see, there is a decrease of the total population of approximately 100 members. And with that, that is all we have for the data. So I'll pass to Matt for how this data is used in the valuation.
All right, thanks, Blake. So as you heard earlier with Mike through the overview, we receive assets as of 12/31. And in order to get to the funding status employer contributions, we have those assets, but we also need to calculate the liabilities. Going back to that overview slide, you have the data that Blake talked about, you have the plan provisions, and you have the assumptions and methods, and that all comes into play on calculating those liabilities. And typically, boards have a great knowledge and are comfortable talking with assets, but it's just important to know how liabilities work and how they are used in calculating that funding status and how we get to that employer contributions. Going to slide 9, our ultimate goal for the plan and through the funding policy is to have the sources of funded, so your assets, balance out to your liabilities in your future. So your benefits, dues to members, on your expenses to the plan, you want to have enough contributions and earnings coming into the plan to balance them out over time. So once the plan gets closer to 100% funded, you want to kind of have, you want them to level out. So in combination with your contributions and investment earnings from your current assets, that maybe need to be enough to cover those benefit and expenses. So in instances where your earnings are not as high as they should be, your contributions might be higher and vice versa. But the ultimate goal of the plan is to have those contributions coming into the plan to cover those benefits and expenses for the future. So jumping a few slides forward, going into assets on how we get there. I'm going to jump to slide 12, Mike. The plan uses an actual value of assets smoothing method. So instead of using just market value, we use a smoothing mechanism where we help limit the volatility of the plan. A great example of that was it's actually the year after we implemented this new smoothing method. We saw the large 2022 loss, which you can actually see down below the cursor of $169 million. So instead of recognizing all of that immediately, we smooth it over a 5-year period. So we recognized a fifth of it last year, we recognized another fifth of it this year, and over the next 3 years, we're going to continue to recognize it. So for this year, we start with last year's market value. We look at the transactions that we received in the asset information. So your contributions, benefit payments, and expenses. We calculate an investment return. And the plan actually achieved above the 7% this past year with a 10.29% return. This resulted in a gain on assets of $26 million. Now we're not recognizing that full $26 million this year. If you want to actually flip to the next slide, Mike. We're recognizing a little over $5 million of it this year. When we take into account last year's loss, we're recognizing a $33 million loss. So even though we saw a good return in the past year, with us continuing to recognize that 22 loss on an actual value basis, the return was actually closer to 3%, so actually 2.91%. So the key item here is that $916 million. That's our actual value of assets method. So much higher than the market value, and that's because we're still smoothing in that 22 loss and continue to recognize that. Flip to the next slide, Mike. So here is a breakdown of asset returns historically. And it's a great representation of why we use the smoothing mechanism. Now, prior to our change in 22, we used a smoothing mechanism, but it wasn't quite this way. We just updated recently during the experience study, but still had a smoothing feature to it. But you can see here why we use an actual value method versus market value. The market value is the blue line here, and you can see the large fluctuations. For example, in 22, we were around like 12%, but down in 23, we're like negative 10%. Now we're back up to 10%. And the pink line here is actual value of assets, and it's much closer to the orange line, which is your expected return. And that's the ultimate goal of this, is to limit that volatility of the return and limit your contributions funding status to your plan. So once we have our assets, we start calculating our liabilities. And present value future benefits is basically the possibility of any benefit amount or payment date of a member based on our current assumptions. So there's certain things that we know as of the valuation date, your age of a member, their service and your salary, but we have to come up with assumptions to calculate what their future benefits may be. So say Joe is 40 years old, and what is this probability that he's going to have disability benefit in the future at certain ages, or retirement benefit, or is he going to have a death benefit due? We come with assumptions to calculate all these probabilities of these future benefits, and that's your present value future benefits for your population. Now we break that present value future benefit down even further into 3 different groups. You have your actual accrued liability, and that's the portion of the present value future benefits, which you can see here in pink, that is accrued as of the valuation date. Now, everything else in the future is either your normal cost or present value future normal cost. The normal cost, Mike will talk about it later, how it ties into the contributions, but that's a portion of the present value future benefits that's going to be accrued in the upcoming year. So going back to Joe, say he has 20 years of service, what is going to be the cost to the plan of him accruing an additional year of service? That's the normal cost for Joe. Now you do that for every active member, and that's the normal cost to the plan. Going to the next slide, this is the plan's current breakdown of present value future benefits. They're a little above 1.4 billion. A large portion of that is your actual accrued liability, which is almost 1.3 billion. And then the rest of it's your normal cost and present value future normal cost. The 25.5 we'll see later on when Mike walks through the key valuation results. That's the normal cost for the upcoming year of accruing that additional year of service. Now, after we calculate that for the liabilities, it's important to understand the gains and losses to the plan and really know the deviations between actual versus expected. So experience study that I think Mike mentioned this earlier is we went through an experience study a few years ago. We're going to go through another experience study in a few more years. And it's really just to tie down these assumptions to make sure they're reflecting our best expectation of future experience. So we come up with assumptions around like termination, retirement, death, disability. What is the plan going to return on their assets? What is their salary increase into the future? And inflation. So we dive into all these assumptions, and like unfortunately, we don't really have a crystal ball of knowing. Go back to Joe, like what is his salary going to be in 20 years, or when he might terminate, or when he might retirement. So we have to come up with an assumption as a whole for the group to limit that volatility of the plan, because ultimately volatility destroys budgets, and that's what we're trying to minimize. So diving into the asset gain loss, if you want to go to the next slide, Mike. We kind of talked about this earlier. We saw a market value return above that 7%, but on an actual value basis, we were at 2.91%. And the key driver of that was that 2022 loss that we're continuing to smooth in. So a majority of the $39.8 million loss on assets resulted from that 22 loss. And it's something very common that we saw across not just your plan, but like across plans across the board. The 22 loss was very rough on pension plans, but luckily you didn't have to recognize that all of it immediately. We're going to smooth it in and hopefully have a nice gain next year to kind of help offset it. Hopefully the investments are up in 20–30%, but that's very wishful. So the next one is liabilities. Gain loss. We play a very similar game. We want to understand any deviations between actual versus expected for liabilities. So we look at last year's accrued liability. We take into account normal costs, the actual benefit payments, and expected interest. And we saw a gain, or sorry, a loss on liabilities of $15 million. And it kind of ties back to one of the notes that Blake had earlier on the salary increase, or average salary increase being higher than expected, and just a total overall population. That was the key driver of the liability loss. Now, it was limited a little bit. We did see a small gain on the plan due to deaths being a little bit higher than expected, but it didn't really outweigh the salary increase. Now, jumping to the next slide. This is a new slide that we added in this year. We dug into gains and losses a little bit further. So we looked at contributions, actual versus expected, and we also have that reserve that we looked at, actual versus expected. Overall, the reserve year over year, there's going to be a small gain or loss each year. But the big one that we kind of want to start looking at was those contributions. There really wasn't much deviation this past year just from the higher payroll. But it's something that we want to look into, and I know we're looking at just based on legislation right now, that it could potentially grow wider where the plan's not putting in what they should be based on actual determined contributions. But overall, between these two, during 2023, it actually ended up in a gain of the plan of $500,000. So taking all the two losses from assets and liabilities and adding in the small gain here, the plan ended up seeing a loss of $54.3 million. A large driver of that, again, was that 2022 loss coming into play. So this $54.3 million will tie into the contribution calculation that Mike's going to go into.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, so all those numbers and gains and losses, we're just going to kind of walk through how they impact the funded status of the plans and the contributions of the plans. So when we talk about unfunded liability or pension debt, we're talking about how much is the liability minus how much assets do we have on an actuarial basis. And then when we talk about funded status, we're talking about how much assets do we have divided by how much liability. So that's a funded percentage or a funded ratio. So here's our results compared to the prior year. You can see that market value was up a little bit because of the good return we had in 2023, but we didn't recognize all that return, as Matt said. So actuarial value was actually down because we're trying to close the gap. The smoothing method closes the gap between the actuarial value and the market value over time. So overall, the liabilities were a little bit up, as Matt described. Overall, the unfunded accrued liability or the pension debt increased from 343 million to about 383 million. So we have an additional 40 million in pension debt that we have to deal with. What that did on a funded ratio basis, on an actuarial value basis, it brought it down from 73.3 to 70.5%. Yeah, market value actually improved because this year we did receive more return than the 7% assumption. So it did improve our funded status. If we went straight to the market value, we weren't smoothing, but it's pretty low at 64% because of the 2022 losses that Matt talked about. So how does that affect our contribution requirements? And so this was, again, the process. We put all these inputs in. Matt talked about what the total cost of the plan, the present value of all future benefits is. And then we split that into actuarial accrued liability, and then those present value future normal costs. We compare this actuarial accrued liability again to the actuarial value of assets, and the difference is that pension debt or unfunded liability. That's one component of the payment, and then the other is those present value future normal costs. What's this year's cost? This year's cost to give all members and active members an additional year of service. So the contribution that we, on an actuarially determined basis that we calculate, is the additional cost to pay for this year's benefit normal cost, plus we have to fund that pension debt over a 15-year period. Basically, we have a layered amortization, but any new debt is 15 years of payment. So the formula to calculate what the actuarially determined and what the employer's portion of that is, we take the normal cost plus that pension debt amortization payment, we interest adjust it to the middle of the year, and that's the total contributions. But then we subtract out members are paying their contributions, which are getting nearly everyone's at 9%. And that total contribution minus what we're getting from the active members becomes actuarially determined employer contribution. That's the amount we would want to get if we had a full contribution amount we could get. This is just a demonstration of that pension debt and how the layered amortization works. The first year we set this, we had a pension debt of $336 million, and so we're funding that every year, $34 million a year. Each year since then, due to the losses in the assets mainly, we've had additional pension, we took out additional pension debt, basically 20 million and now 54 million. It's just building on each other. So it's increasing the amount we have to pay for amortization, just not just paying for the normal cost, but paying for that past service debt. 34 plus 2 plus what, 42 million total. So that number is growing, and it probably will grow for a couple more years as we 2 to 3 more years as we get that 2022 loss out. Most of this information was covered on prior slides. The top half is the data that Blake walked through. The payroll is a big one. It went up 7.75%. Matt talked about, or Blake, average pay went up 6.5 or something. There's also new members. So total payroll actually went up 7.75%. So I had a little bit of an increase in the liabilities that Matt talked about. But most of this information is the information we've covered. And then let's show how it translates to employer actuarially determined employer contributions. So this is the formula we're talking about. We take the normal cost and give it interest to get about 26 million. The amortization payments with interest to the middle of the year is about 44 million. So total contributions needed to support the system are about 70 million, and we're getting 27 from members. So the net for the employers to support the system is 43 million compared to 38 million the year before. When we convert that to percent of payroll, it increased from 13.4% of payroll to 13.9%. It's not as big of a jump because we have a higher payroll now. But it did increase as a percent of payroll. So this is the top half just splits the prior slide into the different employers. But it also compares to, okay, we've talked about, okay, we'd like to get 13.94% to support the system. And due to statutory, this is going down 0.5% per year. This year, we're only getting 13% in 2024. So 13.94% minus 13%, we're not getting enough to support the system. I think that is about a $3 million less in money that we would get, that we're expected to get, because we're only getting, $40 million in contribution versus the 43 million that we set up here. So when we had that scale that was saying, contributions plus expense, plus member contributions equals, has to balance with the benefit payments and the expenses. Sorry, contributions plus investment return has to balance out. If we're not getting enough contributions, that scale is going to tip towards the liability side. We're going to have too much liability, and it just keeps tipping and tipping. So that's why we talk about maybe getting some legislation to help. This is the same contribution comparison. Last year, the rate was at 13.5%, and we were saying we only needed 13.41% to support. So we got a little bit more money due to the statutory, but this is going down every year from 13.5 to 13 until it hits 9 based on current statutes. And this 13.9 is going up, as I said, for the next 3 or 4 years. So that's where the challenge we face in the next few years. It's this funded status of the plan is going to continue to deteriorate. So this is the funded ratio. You can see it's if we were to go straight to market value, we did climb up to 73.7 on both, but then we had the big loss, and then we had a decent gain. But we're really monitoring the contributions and funded status on this smooth basis. So we have a little bit of loss the last few years to hold our funded ratio up a little bit, up to 70%. But again, hopefully this will go up and meet us. But this funded ratio is headed down towards this red line over 3 years.
Mike, I think Christina had a question.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I see
Mike,
it now. Thank you.
Can you go back to the last slide?
Yes. So I got 3 screens. I didn't see the hand.
So can you put it in terms for us to understand dollar amounts? So if we look at these numbers, and I
Uh-huh.
said last year we needed 13.41, and they were at 13.5, so we had a little bit of surplus. But going forward, as this goes down by 25, is it 25 basis points a year?
50, so it'd be 13%
Yeah.
next year.
Oh, sorry. So when we look at this, in dollar amounts, let's say for this year, you said we were shy of like 3 million, whatever it was.
This year we're gonna be shy between the 43 and the 40. It's about 3 million. There's some timing differences, but just to keep it simple for you, yeah. Right now, just on this,
Million, and that is probably the closest where we're gonna get to break even going forward if we're dropping by 50 basis points. But if all things were equal, right? I mean, if we looked at this number going forward, and this is kind of the discussions we want to have with the school board is if all things were equal and if we froze everything at 13% or 13.5, right? Then we might be okay. But if you're going to go from 13 to 9, then you're just going to, I mean, and if all things were equal and we just did this percentage to 9, right? Just as an example, 9%, what would that shortfall be like today? If we dropped it from 13.5 to 9, right? I mean, it's if all things were equal, which we know is not going to happen, but that what is that shortfall? Is it if by just dropping it 50 basis points, we're down to 3 million, I can't say that for every 50 basis points it drops by 3 million, or can I? Right? Because if you're going to go, if this is going to be compounded 30 million shortfall every single year going forward when it gets to 9, if all things were equal, we are having a huge issue,
that's right.
right?
Yeah,
Because
that difference of 3 million would, grow to something like 13 or 14 million, I think. I think let me look at something. Yeah, we have the
Right.
difference actually peaking out at about 25 million. I mean, it just keeps growing and growing. I mean, it doesn't just peak out. I mean, we had a 10-year projection, it gets up to like 44 million difference. So
right,
Yeah, and as Mike mentioned,
that's
at
only
13.94,
this
sorry,
doesn't
but
base on our unfunded liability we had before we did this change, correct?
say it again.
So when we changed the funding ratio, we were amortizing our unfunded liability. We had it on a 30-year amortization, and we were like 10 to 11 years into that amortization,
Oh, okay.
right before this new change occurred with this new legislation. And I am not, don't have those numbers at the top of my head right now. But we now implement this, and this doesn't just say that, hey, this is, you put this $3 million shortfall on a 15-year amortization, but it's being added to something else. Correct?
Right. I mean, every time the contributions that come into the system are less than what we say, it's going to add to that unfunded liability. It's just going to be a new piece of debt that we're taking out, right?
Right. So what is that number? If we're short 3 million this year, what is the number that we're adding that 3 million to?
So the unfunded liabilities, I'm sorry. Here. So the unfunded liabilities of the plan right now are 383 million. So next
Right.
year we might add 3 million. Next year might be 5, and then 10, and then 15 or 20. I mean, it's going to, every year we're just going to be adding pieces of this. In addition to the asset loss, if we don't receive enough money from the fund to keep up with the system, this is just going to grow and grow and grow. Yes.
So this is kind of what I want the trustees to understand is like, it's not just the 3 million we're short this year. We're adding 3 million to the 382 million. And that 382 million is amortized. Is that a rolling 30-year or is that?
It's
It's
15 years. We're paying off the original 336 million from 2022. We're paying that off over 15 years. So we're paying it down 35 million a year. But it's growing faster than we're paying. I mean, so there is a good payment plan. If we were to get all these contributions, it would pay down the good chunk of that 336 million over 15 years. But when you don't get the full amount to pay it, then it just takes away from what the good stuff you're doing. You're not really paying it down because you're adding another number in here that can be 2, 3, 4, 5 million every year.
Well, so the big issue I have is just, this is the most critical slide I want trustees to see is we've got the 382, right? And that's with this 3 million we're adding was netted because of that loss, but we can't guarantee that we're going to get a 10% return every year, right? Our minimum threshold or our threshold goal is it 7%?
7%, right?
7%. So if we get less than 7%, then this 382 million is going to grow. Well, the 3 million is going to grow significantly. If we take a loss, then that's going to grow significantly because that's amortized over 5 years. It's a smoothing process. So we could be, if we have a bad market next year, we could be closer to 400 million. Right. And that's a huge number that I want people to really, I don't think that the school board understands how big this liability is. And what was our unfunded liability? We were not at 336 originally, Sue. We were 11 years into an amortization from a long time ago. And I thought we were in the $200 million range.
I know with the experience study, we did change the method, so I'm not sure, Mike or Matt, if you can comment on what that did to to that 30-year versus now we're in a 15-year.
Right. I mean, it's still, yeah, we had a different method before and it was hard to compare from year to year.
But the number still was the same, right? The methodology changes based on, the makeup and whatever, and you tweaked a bunch of things, but you wouldn't have
Right.
tweaked enough
Even back in 2019, I mean, that number was 242.3 million.
I was thinking 240 million is what we had.
Yeah.
So we were at 240 million before we made any changes to the plan. And that took us quite a bit up, and I recall when they proposed this new plan. And now we are at 382 from 241. So we're almost 150 million over what we were if we had kept pace and didn't change anything. And those are the numbers that we really need to bring to the school board and say, this is not chump change. This is really impactful dollars. And if we don't rectify this, we are going to be as bad as the state of Illinois with their pension plans. I mean, we're already red target. I mean, and back even in when we had 240 million, we were only still in the 70s, right? We were never higher. We were never in the 80s. Am I making sense?
There is a section in the report, section 1.7, where we actually went back recently and calculated actual accrued liability under all the same methods. So you can kind of compare. So instead of having like the old method and the new method now, I'm looking at it right now. So the unfunded accrued liability back in 2015 was $265 million. And you could just, it went to 281 and it jumped all the way up to 357 in 2017. So it seemed, and then after that, it's always been around 350 to upper 300s million.
Yeah.
So I just want to highlight that so we weren't comparing two different methods but even back then in 2015, we were at like 77%, and it's kind of been declining a little bit, and it's mainly around 70%.
Right. And I've been on this board for 20 years, and we never got close, right? The whole COLA funding ratio, we never got even close. But that's, I mean, we shouldn't drop that much closer, you know, shy of 80% down to where we are today. And I'll get off my soapbox.
That was well said. So, yeah, that's the struggle. So again, this number is just gonna keep going down, and which is gonna put more pressure. We're gonna ask, the actuary is gonna ask for more money. And the statutory is gonna give us less money. So it's a struggle. And we provided plenty of projections and options to help Sue and the team support. Asking for more money, asking for a higher rate, and calling attention to what's going to happen if not. So I don't have a lot other to say, you know, just we like to cover the risk, but all those things you talked about, again, it's 7% return. We need to achieve that every year to even just keep pace with that and not create more pension debt.
And Mike, we have another question. Emily had a question.
Thank you.
First, Christina, I am listening and hearing you very clearly. But is the state laws, do they only affect our little plan, or do they affect all the pensions in the state? Like, can we get a lot more people to be mad about it and change it?
So, Emily, there are 3 plans in the state of Missouri. There is the St. Louis plan, there's the Kansas City plan, and then there's everyone else. And each of them have very different requirements. And so one of the things you'll hear about public St. Louis teachers in Kansas City, well, so St. Louis teachers outside of Kansas City and St. Louis, they pay a higher contribution and they do not get Social Security. So if you're in the Missouri state plan, that's where you get your COLA, is through your retirement plan, because you do not qualify for Social Security. St. Louis has always paid a lower contribution rate as an employee, but yet you get to keep your Social Security. So therefore, your Social Security, your COLA comes from your Social Security, not from the teacher's retirement plan. Right? And that's the same thing with Kansas City. And so when these legislative changes occurred, no one in the city of St. Louis or an alderperson or a state rep that represented city of St. Louis teachers, even St. Louis County, recommended this change for us to be able to change these funding ratios. It was somebody from Timbuktu, Yahoo, Missouri, that had no standing, I call it, for St. Louis teachers in this plan to change it. And we had no ability to, because of the way the politics goes in Jeff City, to be able to argue and fight it, because we just didn't have anybody fighting to not approve this. And it really was, the intent was to save St. Louis public school money. But it's calling robbing Peter to pay Paul, or as my grandpa used to say, you're just short-term stupid. Long-term greedy, right? So that's what happened in the plan, and that's why this change is so critical when we want to meet with St. Louis Public Schools again, because again, your board is, when this happened, it was a state-appointed board. There was only a 3-member board that happened to do this, right? And approved it. You now have an elected board, and that elected board has not been educated into why this happened and what the detriment is to St. Louis Public School teachers, right? So while you think that these numbers come out, you're going to lose. So you are at a 50-50%, and I believe, Mike, you might show this, is that when you look at the amount of teachers that are in the plan and the amount of retirees, you're pretty much at a 50-50, right? So you only have, so as your retirees grow in population, for retirees. Let's see what that number is. So, right, so you're 50-50, you're right there. Number of actives is 5,000 and your number of retirees should be 4,000. So you're pretty close to 50-50. As you get more teachers that retire, your benefit payments are going to go up and you're going to need more money from the plan, and you have less people paying into the system. And so, and the people paying into the system are paying a higher percentage into for their coverage. And so you're not competitive anymore with the state plan. And so your retention of teachers is only going to go down, and your student population is, you know, the less teachers, you're not going to be able to staff it with just temps. And so that's why the snowball effect happens. And I mean, again, I had a kid in the St. Louis public school system, and when she was in first grade, they lost accreditation, and we went to this whole saving the system and reducing all these benefits, but that has long passed. And so this is why I really, truly believe that the school board needs to be educated on the detriment of the policies that it did to short gap the funding of St. Louis public schools on the short end. And they just went overboard. And I could honestly tell you that every politician that voted for this shit had no idea what the hell they were voting for and what the detriment to St. Louis public school teachers was going to be. The retirees. So what does an unfunded liability mean? It means if right now St. Louis public schools cease to exist, you would not have enough money in your plan to pay what you owe current retirees and all current active teachers. That's what it means. And when you tell teachers that, that's what would get them angry. We do not have the confidence that we're going to be able to pay 100% of your benefits if this ratio continues to go down.
So Christina, thank you for, I know you're still talking, I'm sorry. One quick question. Are we allowed to provide this information to the teachers? I know you're saying school board, but to the employees that pay into the plan in a digestible format, are we not allowed to do that?
We are in a digestible format. So years ago, Lewis, I think Sheila was still here on the board, maybe Angie. We had a teachers town hall. I don't remember benefits forum, Lewis, we had, and we brought in our entire board. We brought in our someone to talk about our benefits and what we do. We brought in we had different topics, and we opened it up, and I can't remember what school we had it, if it was Carr Lane or a big school district. And we allowed teachers to come and really just let us have it about why don't I get a COLA? And we explained this in like 1 to 2 PowerPoints. And again, this is when you still had a SAB board. And it went really well, but it's been about 10 years since we've done that. And it would be really beneficial to plan that again, to just educate teachers and school board members and everything about what it is that we offer and what it is that is in jeopardy if we do not make a change back at the state legislature to be able to reverse some of the effects of the changes that occurred back in the day. I don't know if it was 2020 or 2019, whenever this came in. But I think this was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2018 is when the first year of the change in legislation. It was passed in 2017, but it became really effective in 2018 as far as the contributions were concerned.
And hopefully, Emily, I'm sorry, I'm done with my diatribe. I'm done.
It was well needed, and I'm going to try to get y'all on the agenda for a regular board meeting.
Yeah, but I'm not going to be the talks. It's going to be Mike.
No, but this meeting is public and available, but the school board meetings probably have a bigger reach. And I ran for school board to support our kids' teachers, and this is just really scary. So I agree, we need to make whatever it takes to get things better and, you know, keep the school's budget mostly balanced. But yes. Thank
Well,
you.
I just wanted to say that we are going to possibly do all those things that you're suggesting. But we do have this situation at a point where for the first time, the board is going to meet with us, hopefully, because of what the Senate and the House said. 4 meetings by September. So I don't want to, I want to do that first and hammer out something. Maybe we cap at a certain percentage, and that's where Mike and the actuarials and Sue and the attorneys all come in to see what we can do to fix this once and for all. If that in fact doesn't happen, or if there is resistance to making that happen, then the Senate is supposed to come in and back in what, September or something, after September, and talk out and see if they can help hammer out a deal. So then, after we do all that, hopefully we will have something and we don't have to go to Plan B, which is the plan that you all are suggesting. But I am for anything to get them to understand that something has to happen and it has to happen now. But I do want to give everybody ample time to try to hammer out something in an agreeable manner. So that's where we are right now. We have it. They're gonna have to meet with us, and then we're gonna do all those things, and then we can say, "Hey, you all, this ain't working," and then we can go with Plan B. That's what I'd like to see.
Okay, in the meantime, in between time, we need to start setting up dates for these meetings. This is June, and we have to have this in order, some type of order by September. And I also think that the retirees need to know what's happening. Let's not keep it secret. We're not going to go with a meeting like we did at Carr Lane, but some type of information must be sent to them.
That would be in the form of a newsletter, and that's what we've been doing all along. But
Well,
we're gonna intensify it. We have told them that we're at 62% funding, and we've done all those things. But the specifics, we can do that in a newsletter to all the retirees. Sue, you got anything else that we could add to that?
Louis, they do not read that newsletter, okay? I
exactly.
can let you know that.
Okay.
Hmm. So we have to find some other type of medium to get this point across. I mean,
Okay.
don't give up on the newsletter now, but
Yeah.
still,
No,
yes,
we're
we
gonna
need
do
something in
that.
addition to the
Doris is
newsletter.
right. They don't read it, so we'll have to look at other avenues to make that happen. But in the meantime, we do need to meet with them 4 times to see what they're talking about and what they're suggesting happen. Because remember, before that, they wouldn't meet with us at all. So now, hopefully, they're gonna meet because that's what they agreed to do. So let's see. But in the meantime, I guess we need to possibly caucus and have another exec meeting to see exactly what else we can do to let the retirees know.
Yeah.
And just
Okay.
what I want to say is that when I spoke with Matt on the call about this, that I did say, you know, he did mention in full disclosure that he wanted to hire his own actuary to look at the same numbers that we're looking at here. We have nothing to hide, the methodology and everything. So I strongly recommended, like, why spend double the money when we have all the numbers, all the retirees, we have everything, and we sit down and come together and we ask we ask the same actuary, Mike and staff, to run different scenarios, and then we just split that cost, as opposed to each side running their own scenarios, or, you know, a tweak here and there that, you know, we're not disclosing to each other, right? I don't want to come back and say, well, hey, my guy says it's only $1 million change, and we're dealing with direct retiree data that comes from our system for retirees.
Right.
So that's what I want everybody to know, that I said, let's work together. Let's not, you know, his and hers kind of reports, and just come together to collectively roll up our sleeves and get the work done.
Well, hopefully those meetings is where that's gonna happen.
Yeah, and we'll have a little bit more of an update
Exactly,
in Ally and Dave's
right.
report here in just a
Exactly.
little bit.
And I think we had one tentative solution was to cap it at a certain amount, and we'll see how that works.
Yeah, but we did provide many, I kind of lost track, but you know, it
That's
was
right.
at least 12 to
That's right.
15
That's
different
17
scenarios.
to do.
17 others.
Okay. Yeah, so we did provide all of that data to the Board of Education on the original proposal and then all the other scenarios.
I think I'm done here. I was gonna say contribution risk, but that's the thing we've been talking about. It's probably the biggest risk to the system is that we don't get enough contributions
All right.
into the system to support it. So I think we've so I don't know if there's any other questions. All right. I don't know if there's do you have to approve the?
Yeah, we do, Mike, if you would stop sharing your
Yep.
screen and I'll put that up. It's the number 2.
Did we want someone to read that one?
Yeah, you're great.
Okay, would somebody like to read number 2, the valuation?
I would like to accept the 2024 actuarial valuation report as presented by the actuary.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. Are we gonna do a roll call vote?
Yes,
Mhm.
no other.
Oh, any other questions or concerns? Any other questions or concerns? Last time, any questions or concerns? Okay, we're gonna take a roll call vote.
Angela Banks,
Is Angie here?
I think that is iPhone.
Christina Bennett,
Yes.
Lois Cross,
Yes.
Sheila Goodwin,
Yes.
Emily Hubbard,
Yes.
Shanice Johnson,
Yes.
Yvette Levy,
Yes.
Martell Mann,
Martell, you there?
Bobby Richardson,
Yes.
Albert Sanders,
Yes.
Doris Walker,
Yes.
and then Martell, were you there?
He's on mute.
All right, well, we do have 9,
Okay,
so the motion carries.
motion carries.
So thank you, Mike and Matt and Blake for presenting that today.
All right, thanks everyone.
All right, thank you all so much. Okay, where are we? Get back. It's been a long time. Okay, report of the committees. Benefits, Emily Hubbard and Shanice Johnson. You all have a report?
We do. We wanted to just bring you all up to speed about the special open enrollment period that took place. We have 19 retired Medicare eligible members who switched from the St. Louis Public Schools commercial plan to our Medicare Advantage plan, and that will take effect on July 1st of 2024. Also, we have proposals that we are awaiting for our dental services, and they are all due on Thursday, June 20th. That is our report.
Okay, any questions or concerns for that committee? Questions or concerns? All right, thank you, Emily and Shanice. All right, we'll go to trustee business, Sheila Goodwin and Angie Banks.
No report at this time.
Okay. Then we'll go to investments, Christina Bennett and Albert Sanders. That would be for April 11 and May 16, 2024.
Do I have a report? Because I'm at work.
Yeah, there's no motions at this point.
No motions?
Yay, thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Legislative rules and regulations, Yvette Levy and Doris Walker. Well, we pretty much covered that I covered it as well. So we all kind of work in conjunction with each other. So we're waiting for the next legislative session in January, and we're gonna meet with the legislature, with the board and possibly the Senate and or the House after after September, hopefully. So we'll be ready for January.
Louis, when you find out the information when you are going up there, let me know in advance. I can
Okay.
take off work if
All
you
right.
let me know in advance.
I thought I know we talk all the time, but I'll make sure I let you know, Doris.
No, I don't talk to you like that. I like Gail. I love your wife.
The hits keep on coming. Okay. All right. Okay, Doris, I'll make sure I give you a call.
Okay.
Personnel and professional contracts, Bobby Richardson and Martell Mann.
No report at this time.
Okay, but you all will be busy pretty soon.
Okay.
All right, next, new business. Any new business? Report of the attorney. Do you have anything?
Yes.
Okay, you want to go in executive session?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna get a motion here to go into executive session. So hold on, to give Sue a time to get that done.
And I don't know if Mike and, okay, there they go.
Everybody's off?
Well, yeah. Let's see.
Okay.
Sheila Goodman makes a motion to close the meeting and that all records and votes to the extent permitted by law pertaining to and or resulting from this closed meeting be closed under RS Missouri and 610.021 for the purpose of having a confidential or privileged communication with the legal counsel for the public school retirement system of St. Louis on legal matters.
Richardson second.
Okay, we're gonna do a roll call vote. Any questions or concerns? Questions or concerns? Last time, questions or concerns? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Go into executive session.
Christina Bennett,
Yes.
Louis Cross.
Yes.
Sheila Goodwin,
Yes.
Emily Hubbard,
Yes.
Shanice Johnson,
Yes.
Yvette Levy,
Yes.
Martell Mann, Bobby Richardson.
Yes.
Yes.
That was Martell.
Thank you. Albert Sanders,
Yes.
Doris Walker.
Yes.
Okay, so we do have 10, motion carries.
Okay.
So let me do just a few things. Take just a moment to get us.
Okay, we're out of executive session. So Al and all the people that had that difficulty, Sue, did you want to turn it over to IT or IT
Yeah,
folks?
we'll look into that and try to get some clarification for you on if that happens again, what to do, or, to provide some assistance with that for Zoom.
Okay,
Okay, because three people said, I know Christina said hers came up. You said yours came up, and my CC is not highlighted green. It's just that the top, my options were to hit OK or to leave meeting. So it's still up there because I didn't hit OK because I didn't want to leave meeting.
yeah,
Because
why don't you hit leave meeting, Al?
If he leaves meeting, then it's going.
So we
I
can adjourn.
I have the same
Hey,
thing
Yeah,
you're
going on.
playing. You're joking, but I'm serious.
I'm
It
not.
doesn't
I'm
make
not
sense.
joking at all. We already said we're gonna turn it over to IT so they can fix it. We don't know why it's doing it, but they're gonna check it out and find out.
Yeah, and if you were to leave the meeting, I mean, not saying you necessarily want to do that, but I could always let you back in
Yeah,
too. But hopefully that's not the only way to fix the problem.
right.
We'll
That's
try
my
to-
concern because it was more than one person who actually it showed up from 5 people on the meeting, so everybody that left the meeting.
Oh
But that's
no,
okay.
mine still say this meeting is being recorded and live stream across.
Yeah, we're back.
Oh, it's gone back. It's gone back normal.
Yeah, we're back live now.
It's back normal. Okay.
All right,
Okay.
IT sounds good.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I thought I did.
I didn't hear you, Doris.
Sheila
Louis.
Goodwin makes a motion that this meeting be adjourned.
Richardson second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Hey, nay. I didn't say yeah. I said nay.
Okay,
But make sure they get
Goodbye,
recorded.
Albert.
okay, we'll
On Thursday.